Welcome to the special at-home edition of JAT Chat today, presented by the Journal of Athletic Training, the official journal of the National Athletic Trainers Association. The purpose of today's event is to provide an open forum for athletic trainers and other healthcare professionals to ask questions and discuss the recently published companion manuscripts, Development of a Peer Education Program to Improve Concussion Knowledge and Reporting in Collegiate Athletes, and Randomized Controlled Trial of a Novel Concussion-Education Program for Collegiate Athletes. Today, I'm joined by two of the manuscript's authors, Dr. Meredith Kneavel from LaSalle University and Dr. William Ernst from Chestnut College. My guest athletic training clinician today is Mr. Brendan Connell, the head athletic trainer at Pomona High School. At this point, I would like to introduce Meredith, Bill, and Brendan. Thank you guys for taking the time to meet with me today.
Thanks for having us, Kara.
Thanks for having us.
So first, I would like to ask Meredith and Bill, how did you guys get involved in this research, and tell us a little bit about your backgrounds?
Sure. So my background, I'm a clinical neuropsychologist. I had played at a very high level up until high school. So it's sports, basketball mainly. So I have some athletic background, but not nearly at the level of a collegiate athlete. And also I've coached youth sports. So those things kind of all came together to kind of inform my outlook on concussion education. And in terms of what was the main impetus for our work, developing the program and the national RCT, that was the Mind Matters Educational Programs Challenge from the NCAA and the DoD. As you're probably aware, they were calling for innovative programs to help change the culture of concussion, mainly programs that might be able to increase concussion reporting and safety. So myself and Meredith started thinking a lot about, well, what might we do in terms of developing a proposal? How could we approach this? And then we were very fortunate to have the athletic trainer at the time at Chestnut Hill College, one of them, Brendan Connell, join in with us. He kind of came into it, I think, somewhat blindly, and we talked him into it, and he ended up being a tremendous asset in terms of having an athletic trainer, who's working with athletes on a daily basis, and he really helped us develop and implement the program.
Yeah, Bill and I have been working together for quite some time on a number of different projects, and we had a strong track record of good, solid research and a good, solid research relationship. And Bill approached me and said, "Do you want to work on this together?" And I said, "Yeah, let's sit down and talk about what we could possibly do together." And we came up with a really nice idea, and really a lot of it was Bill's idea. And we brought Brendan and we brought some other strong leaders at the college together who were all in, and they said, "Absolutely, this is a great idea. Let's work on this together." And the college, Chestnut Hill College, had great buy-in right from the beginning, worked really well together to do it. And they were really supportive. And that supportive interprofessional team, I think, was one of the reasons that it was very successful.
Yeah, just if I could elaborate briefly on that point, one of the nice things about being at a small college is I could literally knock on the door of the athletic director, and who I know, because there isn't, thousands of faculty and staff, and say, "Hey," at the time it was Lynn Tubman, who's now the athletic director up at Muhlenberg College. And I said, "Lynn, I have an idea. What do you think?" And she goes, "Sounds great. Anything that's going to take care of our athletes, I'm in." And then I also met with Dr. Lenore Talley, our vice president of student life. And I said, actually in the cafeteria, I said, "Lynn, hey, I have an idea. What do you think?" She's like, "Let's do it." So it was really, a lot of buy-in institutionally straight away. And you were asking about backgrounds, Meredith, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring her into this is she's a biopsychologist. So she can kind of bring that neuroscience lens in, and she's an excellent methodologist as well in terms of research. So, I was like, all right, who's going to make me look extra good? So Meredith was one person, and then we were so lucky to get Brendan.
Thank you. Now, Brendan, tell us a little bit about how you got brought into all of this, and where did it really start, and how did you feel like you influenced the project?
Sure. Just with working at Chestnut Hill College is it's a really tight knit community. It's a school of athletes, and it looked like a great opportunity for me to learn in a research project, as well as, put our athletes at the forefront of making sure that their health and their care is just treated with the best knowledge at hand. So I was all about that from the get-go. And just getting to know people in different departments at the college was a great experience, and I'm forever thankful for them to invite me in and have me be a part of this. So it was really, really a great experience.
So one of the things that's really unique about this program that you discuss in the 2 companion manuscripts is that it's a peer education program. So why have a peer education program?
So it's a good question. If you look at the landscape of concussion education, what you tend to see are a lot of programs that we would define as top-down programs. You have an expert like a neurologist, an athletic trainer, for example, providing a seminar to a sports team or a sports medicine physician. Or you have an expert organization like the Centers for Disease Control or the NCAA providing the educational materials. And that's certainly a fine approach. It's important. And those approaches have helped improve concussion knowledge and awareness. Absolutely. But the question that remained in terms of the effectiveness of those types of programs is, do they really change the culture of concussion within a sports team and within a sports program? And namely, do they increase reporting behavior safety? And I think there's a pretty strong consensus, not only in the literature, but among these major organizations, that was an area that really needed some additional work and support. So we decided, let's approach this from a different angle. Let's look at it instead of top down. Let's look at it bottom up, grassroots, and let's kind of meet the top down programs from the bottom up and just come at it another way. And through our own experiences athletically and coaching and working with athletes, we thought the best vehicle here is going to be the teammates themselves. Peers delivering the educational material with appropriate guidance and supervision and support. And, there's a very lengthy, robust literature around social observational learning. We tend to imitate or want to aspire to those we admire, those that are similar to us in whatever endeavor that we're involved in. So we figured, well, let's harness that, and let's harness the power of the team dynamics. People tend to listen to their peers, and there's a pretty rich literature too around peer-mediated or peer intervention programs having success with lots of different populations. So that was the main idea. And the last thing I'll say there was, we really felt we needed something that was going to engage the student athletes. We really wanted them to actually do something, not just sit there and listen and review fact sheets and videos. And again, those approaches are important. They help increase knowledge and awareness, but we really wanted to engage them. And what better way to engage them is have them led by their peers actually doing things.
Thank you, Bill. Now, Meredith, can you give us a little bit of an overview of how the program was created?
We developed the program with multiple steps. So the first thing that we did was we actually created a focus group in which we took our men's lacrosse team and our women's soccer team, and we asked them what was the culture of concussion on campus. And from that focus group, we we came to understand really what was going on, and that focus group then led us to really understand, okay, what was really needed on campus. And from those results, we then started to develop the educational materials that were needed. Those educational materials then we took and we used our peers in the student athletes, and we put those educational materials that we developed in front of them, and we said, okay, now we have these educational materials. What is your feedback from that? Brendan was with us. Bill and I had those educational materials, and we had them give us feedback and say, you know, how's this working? And they gave us a lot of feedback. We modified those materials, and we trained the student athletes with that material, and they presented those materials to their peers.
So I can.
There we go.
You got it?
Yeah. Sorry. Mic was muted. So thank you, because those the two companion pieces do a really great job of introducing both the theoretical background and going in depth into the description. So if anybody's interested, they really should look at those. My next question is for you, Brendan, and how did this peer education program fit into what you were already doing at Chestnut Hill?
Sure. It only expanded on it. So we always, it's mandated by the NCAA that athletes get an education on concussion, and we show that video for 10, 15 minutes at preseason, and this just expands on it. And that's more of a passive way. Like, you're in a room, you're watching a video, you're getting education, are you really engaged? Who knows? Maybe you're an incoming freshman and you got a million other things on your mind. Where's my dorm? How am I gonna adjust to college life? Like, there's millions of things going through your head. This is a cool way for someone on your team, someone that you're already interacting with, and they're like, oh, well, he or she cares about it. I want to care about this too. So it's way more interactive for them to get together and discuss these things. And how concussions happen, how it's treated, and what's the return to play protocol and why we do it. So I was there for the peer educators to answer any questions in regards to the return to play process. The importance of avoiding a second head injury when you already have one, and just being an advocate for their health and being there for any sort of interaction or any questions that they may have. So I thought that was really an important aspect of it. It's like, hey, we're gonna get together, we're gonna do 2 meetings together as a team, and we're gonna talk about this because we're a community, we're a family, and we want to take care of each other. And I think that was the biggest thing that I took away from it. And that was probably the most important part of this whole thing for me, anyways.
Thank you. So how did you guys select these peers that would then lead the peer education program?
So we, I can start with this, and I'd be curious to hear about Brendan's response, because he was part of that process directly. But the basic idea is a committee is formed between one of the coaches and the athletic trainer that serves a given team. And we also like to have an administrator in athletics or sports medicine as part of that 3-person selection committee, mainly to just help facilitate any types of organizational things that need to occur. And then they meet and they decide, who are these 2 people going to be? One needs to be an underclassman and the other an upperclassman. So that way, when the upperclassman graduates, you have that continuity of the underclassman moving into the more senior role. And the attributes that we look for are, 1, they need to be solid students academically. Obviously, they need to have good leadership capabilities. They also need to be, in terms of the athletic capability and social standing, they need to be solid. They don't have to be the star or a captain, but they should be someone that's solidly in the mix in terms of socially and their athletic capabilities. And then obviously have positive attitudes around health in general and concussion in particular. So those are some of the attributes we look for. In our experience, we've implemented this at Chestnut Hill for about 5 years now. When we get to the selection, usually right away, and I'm not involved in that, it's the committee that I just mentioned, right away, within maybe 5 minutes, they know who these folks are. The coaches, the athletic trainers, they know their teams, those players well. So I don't know if Brendan wants to elaborate on any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So right on point with that, Bill. I remember interacting with the coaches and, really getting input from the athletic director and the coaches as well. And I was there for about 2 years when this program was starting up. And so I had already known the athletes, and, it is like, your daily interaction with those athletes, you get to know who they are, what their character is. And, immediately those coaches are like, hey, this guy would be, or this girl would be a great fit for your program, because they may not be the team captain, but they are somebody that the whole team looks up to. And that's a huge aspect of this as well. Somebody that you don't mind for 45 minutes to an hour, them going through this presentation and being like, hey guys, this is important. Let's just kind of get after it right now. And I think that is the main thing, is that it's being presented by somebody that's on the field with you, in the classroom with you, hanging out at social events and everything like that. That is, so that's not somebody just coming in, zero experience with them. They're going through the same, they're on the same path as you, going through college and going through collegiate athletics and everything. So I think that was just, we wanted to find people that, were serious about doing this and just had the right character and demeanor to take on a task like this.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about the program itself, and how did the program go about trying to change that culture, create that shift, and enforce concussion disclosure?
So, I think go ahead, Meredith.
That's okay. I think that, it's very hard to say that we could change the culture itself. We certainly made some movement in the things that we measured. But I think to make an overarching statement that we changed culture would be too bold of us, to be honest with you. But we definitely made a change in the things that we measured. So we measured a number of different outcomes. We measured knowledge of concussion symptoms, knowledge of the return to play protocol, which Brendan was instrumental in helping us formulate. And then we measured all of the outcomes that are related to the theory of planned behavior and theory of reasoned action, which I can certainly explain. We also measured a number of outcomes that are related to reporting behavior and looking at how people report their concussions, and saw a lot of movement on that. Everything that we measured, so we measured at before we implemented the program, immediately after we implemented the program, and then 1 month later. And all of those things changed with the implementation of the program and remained high after 1 month. So we were pretty happy to see those changes not only change after the implementation, but hold steady for that length of time that we had the study going with the implementation of the program as compared to our control group. But again, I don't think we would say that we changed the culture of concussion. I think in order for us to say that, we would really want to see it played out on many more campuses for a lot longer, and get the sense from the athletic trainers. I think that's where we would see and feel, I think, more a sense of change in culture. Bill, did you want to add to that?
I would just say, I think that certainly is a great summary. And in terms of how we try to do it, I think it gets back to the peer-mediated model, really trying to work from within a team, having team leaders say, hey, guys, you know what, or hey, gals, we're not going to hide it anymore. And you're not letting the team down by reporting. You're helping the team. by getting off the field and getting back when you're safe and 100%. And if you're worrying about losing playing time, which is what almost all of them worry about, you're going to probably lose a lot of time if you don't talk to coach, because he or she's just going to think you're not playing well if you're a little dizzy or, your concentration is off. So let them know what's going on with you, so we can have someone like Brendan, or someone like yourself, Kara, work them through the protocol and get them back safe quickly. So, it's just that kind of peer interaction. And the other thing I think that's really unique about our program, we use a cognitive behavioral model of change where the athletes actually list the thoughts that keep them from reporting, and they change those to thoughts that might increase their reporting. So we're hoping that, and Meredith always uses this term, pre-arms them with a thought process of, this isn't in my best interest or my team to hide it. It's actually in my best interest to report it. They have that schema now in their head. And then we hope, and we don't only focus on reporting yourself, we focus on reporting one's teammate, and that's a hard thing. But what are the barriers that they have around that? And we have another worksheet about reporting your teammate that they do in one of the education modules. And they're discussing this as a team as well. So now they're all talking about it as a team, like, oh yeah, I don't want to report you because I'm afraid you're going to be really angry with me. And then, but, someone else might say, well, yeah, but you're actually kind of looking out for me, right? And I don't want to be Pollyannish about this, especially if things get more competitive. We're not under the impression that the team's all going to hold hands together and, before the game and after the game, and we're going to report our concussions. Hooray. We don't really think that's going to happen with every team and every athlete, but we do think this will move the needle to get them thinking about it and creating a norm where the accepted norm is that you do talk to the athletic trainer or the coach, not only when you're concerned about yourself, but when you're concerned about your teammates. So that's what we hope are the mechanisms that change the culture from within the team. And then with the coaches and the athletic trainers buying in, obviously the athletic trainers are all already majorly on board with this, but with the coaches too, getting them to kind of get more on board with this, set the tone from the top.
Yeah, one of the things that was really striking to me about this, your work, was the change in language. Can you guys talk a little bit more about specifically how you try to change the language around concussion?
When you say the language, are you talking about the reporting, the barriers that athletes?
Well, you had a few tables in the manuscript that specifically took this negative language towards and then just flipped it around. Tell us more about that.
Go ahead, Meredith.
That's okay. I think Bill just sort of in the last part of what he was saying really did touch on what I think is very unique about this particular piece that I don't think we've seen a lot in other things. And that is the teammate piece of it. Is that we really had a focus, particularly in the second part of the educational piece, which was focusing on really helping your teammate. So there's an educational component where we have the student athletes identify, and Bill was explaining this before, identify, here are thoughts and cognitions that would prevent me from reporting my concussion, and thoughts that would enhance me reporting my concussions. And then we have them also do that for their teammate. Here's what would prevent me from reporting what I think might be happening with my teammate. And here's thoughts that would pre-arm me to help me report my teammate. And we've analyzed those and looked at, what are the themes around that? And they're things that we would expect. And Bill was alluding to these earlier. If I report my concussion, then I'm going to lose playing time. I'm going to lose my spot on the team. Those are things that we know and we've seen in the literature before. But we also found some surprising things. And some of the surprising things were, what were the things that pre-arm our student athletes to help them to report? And the things that pre-arm them are things like, if I report, I'm going to save my brain in the short term as well as the long term. They are thinking about their long-term health, the long-term health of their brain, but not just for themselves, but also for their teammate. If I report my teammate's concussion, I'm going to be helping them with their long-term health. They're going to be able to have a family. They're going to be able to have, they're not going to be disabled later on long-term down the road. And I think that maybe some of the things that you're talking about in terms of the language that we were really sort of addressing that came out of this, which was, really interesting.
It is. And, another quick example, when you look at the literature on barriers to reporting concussion, what comes up a lot across studies with high school and collegiate athletes, and we found this in our own research, is if I report my concussion, I'll lose my spot. So when we did the piloting of this program and data from our national RCT event, that was one that came up a lot. And we're not coming up with that. The student athletes are. They're writing that on the worksheet. And we're currently working on manuscripts, doing a qualitative analysis of the worksheets. And then they change the thought themselves. And one of the changes for that particular one was, if I report my concussion, I'll come back stronger and retain my spot. Okay. And what's really cool is they're developing some of their own educational material. We're not saying to them, okay, everybody, here are the thoughts that might get you not to report, and here are the thoughts that might get you to report. This is coming from them. So now you have possibly gender, sport, institution-specific kind of language, to use your term, Kara, that they're developing, which is probably going to be more effective because it's germane to themselves and their team and their setting. And in our online manual, we have exemplars from our pilot that you can go into not only barriers to reporting self and how that language changed, but teammates too. One of the ones on the teammate reporting worksheet that the athletes came up with was, and this came up a lot, my friend wants to keep playing and he will be mad if I report him. And that gets changed to, that athlete changed it to, I am protecting him and he will be better when he comes back. So just kind of getting that shift of thinking, if you in line with cognitive behavioral theory and intervention, that hopefully will spur a change in behavior.
And one of the most important things,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. One of the most important things about that component of how the program works is that part of the program is done with the team and with the peer concussion educators alone, not with an athletic trainer, not with a neuropsychologist, not with anybody else. The team does it by themselves. So it's organic and it's done without anybody else there. And that was done intentionally. And that happened so that they really develop those cognitions by themselves and we don't interfere at all. Go ahead, Brendan. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. I was just going to add to the changing of the language. Like anytime we have an athlete step into the training room or they're having an injury, they have a problem that they need addressed, or if it's a season ending injury, you got to turn that negative thought into a positive one. They need to stay, you set little goals as you go through a rehab process so that they can hit and you celebrate those things. That helps with getting them in the right mindset. It gets them out of that negative headspace. And that's just a great practice for almost any aspect of life. And this just adds very much to the injury and recovery process, and especially for concussions. And I certainly didn't want any athlete to ever feel like a rat, like they were ratting out their teammate. I'm like, hey, you're not evaluating that. You're not shutting them down. You're reporting an incident that happened. You're reporting a concussive event. It's my job to evaluate. And that's it. Like, it's as simple as that. And I also like to equate it to, I worked a lot with the baseball team at Chestnut Hill, and when the pitcher catcher dynamic of, hey, the pitcher's not hitting his spots. I think there's something wrong with his arm. Hey, let's shut it down. Let's talk to the coach. We'll rehab it and we'll get you back onto the field. Very much the same with the concussion, where, your teammates and your coaches may see a drop in performance. And, I think that needs to be addressed, where it's like, hey, can you check him out? Like, something's going on, let's just take a look at it. And that's what it is. It's just a conversation where, we want to just look out for you and make sure that you're giving 100% to your team and not 50%.
So what changes did you see, Brendan? Did you see this almost immediately changing, and how did it affect your clinical practice?
It was really great to interact with some of the peer concussion educators. And I did have a little anecdotal story where I had one of the peer concussion educators come to me and like, hey, can you take a look at this kid and, just see what's going on with them? And lo and behold, had a concussion, and, we were able to treat and keep him off the field to prevent further injury. So, and in no way was that peer concussion educator looked down upon or talked negative about or anything like that, which was great. And that was just one story that I do have. And I was like, also, anytime someone comes in and reports an injury, I'm like, hey, I'm proud of you for doing the right thing and like taking care of yourself. So like you just reinforce what they're doing, and just saying, hey, you're doing the right thing. I know this isn't fun. It's not, you're an athlete. You want to be out on the field, and I want to get you back there. So that's just where we come in, and we just try to interact with them and just be that positive cheerleader for them, and just be like, hey, we're here to help you. And that's it.
So let's talk about the other key players in this, and administrating, coaching staff, and even the athletes themselves. What kind of feedback did you guys get from those other key players in this?
Recently, Kara, each year we plan on, when we're going to, do the program, and I meet with our director of athletics, who now is Jesse Balser, and again, Leonard Talley, our vice president for student life, and our athletic trainers, one of our athletic trainers, Denise Wisniewski, she's heavily involved in the program now. And during that meeting, we just kind of talk about, informally, hey, how's it working? What's going on? And the athletic trainers do report an uptick in, and this is anecdotal, obviously, but an uptick in the number of reports that are taking place. And the coaches too. The coaches, sometimes will make comments around, there's definitely more awareness right now, and that's always good to hear. I mean, obviously, these aren't scientific findings. One of the things that really stood out when I spoke with our athletic director, Jesse, he's like, Bill, a couple of the peer educators came up to me and they thanked me for selecting them. They really liked being in that leadership role. They felt it was important, and they felt it was an honor that they're being charged with a pretty challenging assignment, to help, look after the safety and work with the athletic trainer. So that tends to be the feedback that I get. And one of the unintended consequences that I didn't even consider when we were doing this was the potential to develop leadership skills. And when we presented this program to our sport commission, and I'm blanking on it, Brendan, you might remember the athletic league that Chestnut Hill plays in. But when we presented it to the league and the league commissioner, he pulled me aside and he said, Bill, did you really consider, there's a really nice leadership piece to this? And I said, no, thanks for pointing that out. I hadn't even thought of that. So, anyway, we think that that's going to be more of an issue as we try and expand this program to the high school level as well.
And I've since moved institutions to LaSalle University, which is a D1 school. And as soon as I presented this to the athletic director there, he said, this sounds amazing. I want to present it to our student athletes, our coaches. Can you present it? I did. And he was all in, and we've started it there. And with, so we started it, and then the pandemic happened. So, so I've trained student athletes, peer concussion educators, who are well trained, but also could not then train their teammates. But those things happen.
Yeah. One other quick thing I'll say is kind of a humorous thing. One coach came up to me and he goes, Bill, I don't want to insult you or anything or sound like, I'm insulting you, but this idea is so simple. And I said, that's not an insult. That's actually a compliment. And that's the idea. The idea is it just seems to resonate with a lot of people, let's harness the relationship of the team and student athletes to be part of it. They're not the only thing. We're not suggesting that institutions not do what they're currently doing. We look at this as a way to augment it and enhance it. But that's some of the feedback I get, like, wow, that's really a basic idea. And I'm like, yeah, well, it is. And now if it's too complicated, people aren't going to do it. So.
Thank you guys so much. I do have a question from one of our listeners who sent this in beforehand, and they wanted to know what was the role of concussion prevention strategies in this. Did you guys include any education on prevention?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. We, obviously practicing safe, when you're at practice, just avoiding any unsafe sort of activity with your teammate. In games, obviously anything can happen. Talking about the avoidance of a secondary head injury, just the educational portion of this is what to look out for, signs and symptoms of a concussion. We're in the first module where we implemented that.
And you guys also did some education on the return to play. From a clinical side of things, did you see more compliance, Brendan, with return to play, or attitudes change, just anecdotally?
Not that I can really, other than the one story I did tell. And I know that Bill did talk about since the pilot program that there has been an uptick in reporting. I think that it's been a combination just across the country of education, legislation, just really getting that knowledge out to people where they have just better information to make a better decision and to making that decision to report and take care of themselves. But I can't say I think I was only there for another year or so after this pilot program. And then, it wasn't much difference as far as, we still had concussions in the fall, winter, and spring. But as far as an uptick, I can't really, say to that. Yeah.
Kara, when we debriefed the peer educators during the pilot, one of the men's, and video of this is actually on our online manual. The manual has little video tutorials. Brendan's on there. Mm-hmm. He's not wearing the cool hat and sweatshirt he has on now, but he's on there. But the peer educators, most importantly, are on there. And one of the men's lacrosse players talked about, when we explain RTP in the first education module, as Brendan mentioned, and some of the guys on the team would say, "Oh, that's why we got to do all that," if you think about any type of anything, whether it's a drug you have to take or a homework assignment a kid has to do, when you get an explanation of why you're doing it, you're much more likely to comply and do it. So that was one of the great things about having Brendan involved, because he could provide us with that process and help us explain it to the athletes and help train the peer educators about that. We're not just running you through these hoops for fun, and to mess with you. There's a scientifically or evidence-based process around it. I don't know if Meredith, you want to add anything?
I think when we first presented the materials to them and explained the pathophysiology and then explained the return to play protocol and how it tied into the pathophysiology, the student athletes gave us feedback that they really, really appreciated that. They really all of a sudden understood. So rather than just here are the steps in the return to play protocol, which many of them had either been through or seen a teammate go through. So many of them were somewhat familiar with the steps in the return to play protocol. So they understood that, but they didn't understand the why. They didn't understand how it correlated with what was going on in the brain and the reasons for the return to play protocol. So understanding the reasons not only helped them to understand what was the return to play protocol and the reasons for it, they really, really appreciated understanding why the return to play protocol was what it was. And that was sort of the reason why we assessed actually their understanding of it, because we really wanted to see if they were really understanding the return to play protocol and their appreciation for it, to be honest with you. And Brendan was really instrumental in putting that piece in the education module, but also in helping us to understand how the student athletes would have an understanding of that return to play protocol. It was great. But the student athletes really, really gave us a reflection of how important that was for them to understand. So prior to that, their understanding was just like, oh, I have to do this. And after, their understanding was, oh, I understand why I have to do this.
Sure. And anyone that has a concussion is, there's always a concussion and evaluation, and then a consultation of what the next steps are and why. This was just great because it was, presented from the peer educators and I think that is a huge part of it. You're hearing it from your buddy that's on the field with you, and that's a big aspect. Absolutely.
So thank you guys again so much for talking. And there's so many things that this program is very multifaceted, and there were so many different layers of development and taking feedback that I really recommend this to anybody who's further interested. And if any of our listeners are interested in potentially implementing this in their own clinical practice, what resources are available for them?
So the way to access it is our online manual, which the links can be found in both of the articles and through Chestnut Hill College's website. Bill, did you want to?
If you go to Chestnut Hill College and you just Google the Center for Concussion Education and Research, there's a link to the online manual there. And there's also, as Meredith mentioned, in both of the articles in press with JAT, there's links directly to the manual. So you have to read the article. But if you read the article, you'll find the link.
That part of it.
And so it's pretty easy to get to. But just chc.edu, just getting Chestnut Hill's website, get you to it.
And the manual is it's a step-by-step. So the entire program was meant to be utilizing the manual without any intervention. So, and the entire RCT paper is about how anybody could pick up the manual and utilize it without interference. So our role was with anybody who utilized it was just our research part of it, and the utilization of it was on its own.
It's a very good point. Working with Mind Matters and the NCAA, they really wanted something that was scalable and could be disseminated broadly. And that was the idea for the online manual. So once you click on it, there are all the steps to implement the program are laid out, all the procedures, what personnel are needed or recommended, and then all the educational materials are embedded in it. It's really easy to follow. And, Meredith, you want to just briefly touch on the RCT, the athletic trainer debrief?
So inside the RCT paper is a debrief from the athletic trainers who implemented the program. So the athletic trainers gave us feedback about how they felt it was, like how it was to actually utilize it. And overall, they gave us really good feedback, and they gave us feedback about some things that were negative as well. Mostly, they said it was the materials were very easy to access, so the online manual was easy to access. The education materials were interactive. The student athletes really enjoyed the online materials. The worksheets that we talked about earlier were very interactive, and the student athletes really enjoyed those. They did say that the science was a little bit intense sometimes, and that there was some variability. So that words like pathophysiology tripped some student athletes up. Well, we know that. And so we've toned down that a little bit. They also talked about that there's some variability among some of the peer concussion educators. So you'll have a little bit of variability from one student athlete to another. So there are some limitations. The other thing that we know is very difficult is timing. And one of the things that I always say is that if you want to find the busiest student on campus, you find a student athlete. And so timing and scheduling of this is difficult. It takes 2 hours total, an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to train the peer concussion educators, and then about 45 minutes to an hour for the student athlete peer concussion educators to train their team. We do recommend, if possible, to do that during preseason. That's probably the time you're going to find best. We weren't able to do that during this, and that made it more difficult. So to find the easiest way to do that would be to do that during preseason, probably. Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say just the team commitment is 45 to 60 minutes. So a lot of times when I talk with the coaches, they're like, "Oh, no problem. We'll just work this into a team meeting." And then the peer educators obviously have about 45 minutes to train them, and then they have to deliver it to their teammates. So they have about a 2-hour commitment. But I think one of the other things that's very innovative about this program is that's the program proper, but then the peer educators are now embedded on that team.
Right.
So it's not like a one-time thing. They are there now as a resource, as a liaison between the coaches, the athletic trainers, and the team. They're there off the field, social settings, to be role models, to be someone that someone can talk to if they're concerned about themselves or another teammate. So they're constantly present. So that's one of the things about the program that we like. It's a hard variable to measure, but it's one that we feel is very important.
And I think one that we've seen anecdotally from our implementation on our own campuses that really does make a difference. So that the peer educators and the teammates do know their friends, their student athlete friends really, really well. And they notice when there's something going on. And again, like Bill said, it's impossible to measure, but what we hear is that they're noticing things. So something's going on, something's off. And I might say something to the athletic trainer. I might say something to my coach. But, we can't measure that. And we wouldn't want to really. But the other thing that works really well to train the peer concussion educators and their teammates is if you give them pizza.
That works for all college students, right?
It does. I mean, if it's in your athletic budget, we just happen to know that works really well. And when all else fails, maybe some Chipotle.
Yeah, that was when the pizza started to get old. I had to pull out all the stops and get Chipotle. Then
go to the high end.
Yeah, we had to go a little bit higher end, but but pizza. And if that doesn't work, then.
Yeah, we were worried we were going to get flagged with our grant administration and the NCAA because like the pizza bill was really high.
Yeah, men's lacrosse eats a lot of pizza.
That's funny. So as we're closing up, where do you guys see this going in the future?
The program was always designed to scale up and scale down. So, and our student athletes actually, when we did a focus group, told us, you guys really need to take this to, if you really want to change the culture of concussion, this needs to start at a younger age. So, scaling it to the middle school, high school level, and even to the military, to be honest with you. So, Bill and I are working with colleagues to develop this at the high school level and possibly the middle school level, because it really is a small modification to change it for that level. And as Brendan can attest, it's needed at the high school level.
Absolutely. Just being the sole athletic trainer at a high school, I mean, I have 3 levels of football that I would love to get these kids, understanding what a concussion is. In the fall is my busiest season. I see so many injuries. And if I have kids that have the right information in front of them about concussions and how to treat it and how we can get you back on the field, then that's exactly what I want to be implemented at my school. But, it's going to take a lot more than just one athletic trainer at a high school to do that. Like, we were lucky to have 4 at Chestnut Hill, and that I could be pulled away, in the evenings to be a part of this. I could see that being a huge challenge. at the high school level because of funding, because of just compliance, coaches wanting to do it. I know that there's still some old school train of thought, rub some dirt on it and you're good. That unfortunately that I still have to deal with. And it's you got to be diligent. You got to be really committed to, what is true and treating these kids to the best of your ability. And, thankfully at Chestnut Hill College, we had amazing support up and down, coaches, admin, staff, everybody was just amazing. And if we can get people on board like that at the high school level, then we're good to go. I think it'd be a great step forward.
Yeah, I would just like to second that. We, as Meredith mentioned, the idea was how can we make this transferable? Mm-hmm. So when you really think about it, if you look at the military, you have the platoon versus the team or the unit. And you could have peer educators that are, service members. One of my doctoral students, LaToya Small, she was a medical corpsman. She's a lieutenant in the Navy. So I picked her brain and I said, what do you think? How would this work? And she reviewed it and she goes, oh, it would probably be a pretty easy kind of modification. And then as Meredith mentioned, we have a partnership we're developing with NYU's Concussion Center, and an athletic trainer there named Julia Drattel came to a presentation I gave at the sports neurology conference, and we started talking. Mm-hmm. And since we've had some meetings with them, because she does a lot of outreach, she's an athletic trainer at the Concussion Center that does a lot of educational outreach with high schools. And Brendan doesn't fully know it yet, but he's getting dragged back into this next project where we try and modify this for high school students. So just make sure you have some spare time, Brendan.
No problem. Accepted. I accept that challenge. I like it.
That's awesome. It sounds like you guys have a lot of wonderful new initiatives coming our way here soon. So again, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with me today. Brendan, Meredith, Bill, it was a pleasure talking with y'all. Any parting words?
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. And again, we're very grateful to the NCAA and DoD Mind Matters Educational Programs Challenge, who provided us with financial support and consultation. And just to reiterate what Brendan mentioned, at Chestnut Hill College, there has been strong support. The athletic trainers, the director of athletics, vice president of student life, academic affairs, across the board, everybody there, the website folks, videographers, all came together to really help us make this a pretty successful project.
Thank you, guys. And just a reminder for everybody watching and listening, all of these companion manuscripts and all of JAT's material is available free of charge, thanks to the National Athletic Trainers Association. Thank you guys again for joining me on JAT Chat.